When a woman cheats, her first words might shock you. It's not an apology, and it's definitely not the truth. Want to know what she says and why? Stick around, because this will change how you see relationships forever. Cheating is one of the most painful things anyone can experience in a relationship. It breaks trust, shatters confidence, and leaves you questioning everything. But here's the thing. When a woman cheats, her words aren't random. They're calculated, driven by psychology and emotion. Understanding this can give you clarity and control, even in the toughest situations. When a woman cheats, it's not the act itself that shocks you the most, it's the aftermath. It's the way she frames it, the words she chooses, and the tactics she uses to shield herself from judgment. If you've ever been in this situation, you might have noticed that her first words don't feel like an accident. They're calculated, intentional, and dripping with psychological meaning. She's not just trying to explain what happened, she's trying to shape your reaction. And in many cases, the real betrayal doesn't lie in her actions. It lies in the way she attempts to manipulate your perception afterward. To truly understand this, you have to look beneath the surface and decode what her words are really saying. Now, let's be clear. When a woman cheats, emotions run high. Guilt, fear, shame, and anger all come into play. But instead of dealing with these emotions head on, many women will instinctively deploy strategies to regain control of the situation. Think about it. Admitting the truth outright means facing the consequences, the judgment, and the potential end of the relationship. That's terrifying. And for some, it's too much to handle. So instead of taking ownership, they take a different route, one where they keep the spotlight off themselves and firmly place it on you. It's not about logic at this point, it's about survival. And their words, those are their weapons. One of the first things she might say is meant to make you doubt yourself. Words like, "Why are you always accusing me?" or "You're overthinking things," serve a very specific purpose. They flip the narrative. Suddenly, it's not about her actions, it's about your insecurities. Do you see how powerful that is? You've caught her in a lie, or at least in suspicious behavior. But instead of admitting to anything, she shifts the focus. And if you've ever questioned yourself in a heated moment, if you've ever thought, "Am I crazy for even suspecting this?" then her tactic has worked. That's the essence of gaslighting, planting seeds of doubt so you question your own reality. This isn't just a defense mechanism, it's a way to reclaim power when the truth threatens to expose her. But it doesn't stop there. Once she's planted those seeds of doubt, she might take it a step further by flipping the script entirely. "You've been distant lately," she might say, or even, "I just don't feel like you love me anymore." Now, at first glance, these comments might seem completely unrelated to what's going on. But in reality, they're part of a larger strategy. By accusing you of being cold or inattentive, she's setting the stage for justification. She's indirectly suggesting that her actions aren't really her fault. They're a response to your shortcomings. This strategy hits deep because it preys on your natural instinct to self-reflect, to think about what you could have done differently. Instead of staying angry, you start feeling guilty. And that guilt, that's exactly what stops you from digging deeper into her behavior. As the conversation continues, you may find her making statements that blur the line between truth and manipulation. Maybe she admits to texting someone, but she'll likely say, "It's not what you think," or "We were just talking." This kind of half admission is extremely powerful because it feeds you just enough information to make you feel like you're hearing the truth. But in reality, it's only part of the picture. Think about it. By offering just a sliver of the reality, just enough to calm your nerves, she keeps the door open for even more lies, or at the very least, vague answers. The goal here isn't honesty, it's damage control. By controlling the narrative, she keeps herself from getting cornered, while giving you just enough to avoid confrontation. Her willingness to divulge certain details, while withholding others, also speaks to her control over the situation. She knows exactly what she can admit to without giving herself away. These tactical half-truths are manipulative because they allow her to make you feel like you're involved in a conversation about the truth without ever actually confronting the full reality of her actions. If you push further, there's a chance she'll become defensive, labeling your questions as too invasive or untrustworthy. In this moment, she becomes the one who's vulnerable, not you. And by making you feel like you're in the wrong for probing too deeply, she shields herself from any real accountability. You might hear something like, "I've been feeling so unloved lately," or "You don't understand what I'm going through." Again, these aren't apologies for cheating. These are ways to shift the focus entirely. By presenting herself as a victim, she can appeal to your sense of empathy, making you feel responsible for her actions. It's one of the most insidious forms of emotional manipulation. Suddenly, instead of her being the one who betrayed the trust, she becomes someone who's just struggling and is crying out for support. It's an attempt to pull on your heartstrings, to make you care more about her emotional pain than the fact that she violated the trust in the first place. The longer you're focused on comforting her and reassuring her, the less you'll focus on the broken boundaries in her behavior. Another tactic you may encounter is her claiming she wasn't thinking clearly or it just happened. This justification can sometimes be the hardest pill to swallow, as it puts the responsibility squarely on circumstances or external factors. The idea that her actions weren't premeditated, weren't driven by malicious intent, can make the situation feel less deliberate. She distances herself from the full moral weight of what she's done, convincing herself and you that the act of cheating wasn't truly hers to own. It's a psychological way of reducing guilt and portraying herself in a more sympathetic light. Ultimately, her words are designed not only to deflect blame, but also to emotionally manipulate you into accepting a version of the truth that suits her. It's about minimizing the impact of her actions. Rather than confronting the reality of her cheating head on, she provides you with just enough to dampen the intensity of the situation without ever actually addressing the core issue, the betrayal. At some point, the truth may start to become undeniable. The signs are too overwhelming for her to deny any longer. And while you might think this is when she finally comes clean, it's often when the true psychological games start to play out. You'll likely hear phrases like, "I didn't mean for it to happen," or "I was confused." This sounds like an admission of guilt, but it's really an emotional plea for you to let her off the hook. The use of terms like confused or not meaning allows her to absolve herself of responsibility by presenting herself as a victim of circumstances. It's the classic tactic of playing into her vulnerability to make her mistakes seem more understandable. Here, she's asking for your forgiveness, not based on a change in behavior or genuine remorse, but because she is trying to present herself in a sympathetic light. She didn't plan to hurt you, she was just in the moment. This is a manipulative attempt to control your emotional response, guiding you towards forgiving her. Now, you might be thinking, why would she say something like that if she's not truly guilty? Here's the thing. For a woman in this situation, the key goal isn't necessarily getting caught, because the damage has already been done. The goal now is to shift your focus from the act of cheating to your own emotional responses. It's a subtle but powerful psychological move. You might find yourself debating whether she was really in control of her actions, or whether her confusion or momentary lapse of judgment justifies the betrayal. This internal conflict prevents you from taking swift action, whether that's walking away or demanding a more honest and direct conversation. In the chaos of trying to process these mixed emotions, it's possible that your focus becomes less about her violation and more about your feelings for her. By now, the focus has really shifted. Her first words aren't just about deflecting blame, they're about making you second-guess your reality and your emotions. Once she feels that she's laid the emotional groundwork, she'll work on erasing the consequences, making it harder for you to stay angry or frustrated. After all, when someone you care about starts crying or claiming deep emotional turmoil, it's difficult to maintain a rational response. In her mind, that's exactly the point. She's making it about her need for emotional reassurance, rather than addressing your anger or the heart of the issue. But here's the truth that many people refuse to accept. Cheating is a choice. It's a decision someone makes, no matter the emotional or circumstantial stress. And while it might seem easy to rationalize her behaviors based on a temporary emotional lapse or personal conflict, the reality is that the decision to betray trust was a clear, conscious choice. When you listen to these excuses, it's easy to get trapped in the emotional roller coaster she's building around you. It's much harder to stay grounded and demand accountability. Her goal is to not only minimize the blowback, but also to erase the feeling of betrayal, replacing it with feelings of empathy, guilt, and even pity for her situation. That's how manipulation works. It bends the narrative so deeply that your emotional response becomes blurred, and suddenly, her actions aren't as severe as they should be. Now, at this point, she's likely aware of the fact that what she said isn't the full truth. She knows you're likely still upset. But by using psychological manipulation, by deploying these calculated responses, she's trying to turn things around in her favor. If you don't take control of this moment, you'll find yourself stuck, emotionally engaged in trying to fix the relationship without acknowledging the breach of trust that has already occurred. As the conversation continues to unfold, the more she tries to keep your emotions tethered to her story, the harder it becomes for you to draw the line between love and betrayal. This final phase often involves a complete role reversal. Now, instead of justifying her actions, she may turn the table even further by accusing you of being the one who's creating unnecessary drama. She might say something like, "I can't believe how you're acting over this." Or, "If you really loved me, you'd forgive me." The strategy here is pure emotional manipulation. If you felt doubt, confusion, or even guilt throughout this ordeal, it's all part of a tactic to evoke an immediate response from you. Now, instead of being the victim, you're made to feel like the one who's overreacting. The focus shifts to whether your reaction is reasonable rather than what's actually happening in the relationship. This is when the emotional manipulation hits its peak. It's frustrating because, as you sit there listening to these words, a part of you might start to feel like you're to blame for the way things have unfolded. She'll weave stories about how much she's suffered, how she didn't ask for any of this, or how she's worried you're going to walk away forever. It's difficult, because while a small part of you might want to extend compassion and forgiveness, another part is still grappling with the deep cut she's inflicted. And in those moments, if you're not careful, her words will break down your defenses, and you'll start asking yourself whether the relationship, as damaged as it seems, is still worth saving. At this point, many women will attempt to justify their cheating by bringing up past issues in the relationship. Perhaps she mentions how you've been distant or unavailable. "This is what happens when I don't feel appreciated," she might claim. It's a form of emotional deflection, steering the conversation away from her betrayal and onto your alleged faults. She's not taking ownership of what happened. She's pushing you to believe that you had a hand in the cheating, even if you didn't directly cause it. This tactic often succeeds because humans are wired to introspect and evaluate our own behavior, especially when someone else throws doubt on it. She knows this, so she plays to your sense of responsibility, making it feel like your relationship issues are why she sought out someone else. However, don't let her convince you that everything that went wrong was your fault. Cheating is still a decision, and no amount of past conflicts can justify the choice to betray trust. When she tries to make it about something you did or didn't do, recognize that this is an attempt to escape full responsibility for her actions. If you let her manipulate you into believing that the relationship just broke down, she'll have successfully clouded the actual issue, the fundamental betrayal and lack of loyalty that should be addressed head on. In these moments, it's vital to keep a cool head. By this point, You'll likely have heard a variety of tactics and excuses, all of which are designed to take you down an emotional path that prevents you from realizing the core issue. If you get sucked into this whirlwind, you may find yourself agreeing with some of her points out of empathy or a desire to avoid conflict. But in the end, you must remind yourself no amount of justification can erase the fundamental truth that she chose to betray your trust. In conclusion, when a woman cheats, her first words aren't just admissions or apologies. They are calculated attempts to shield herself emotionally while minimizing the damage. Her words are crafted to make you feel confusion, guilt, or self-doubt, all in an effort to regain control of the narrative. By shifting blame, playing on your emotions, and drawing you into a web of half-truths, she tries to erase the impact of her actions and restore some semblance of emotional balance. However, it's up to you to recognize these manipulations for what they are and to decide what path forward truly honors your worth and boundaries. Ultimately, the first thing a woman says after cheating is rarely an honest, straightforward explanation. It's part of a much larger effort to regain control, deflect responsibility, and manipulate your perception of what's actually happened. The question is, are you going to let her take advantage of your emotions, or are you going to stand your ground and face the betrayal head on? Want to dive deeper into the psychology of relationships? Subscribe now for more insights.